Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Sorry for the little hiatus there. I had a little spill on one of my motorcycles, and as such, it's made me increasingly sore, or was really sore for the first 2 days. Today is a little better. I'm still having hell, doing anything major. But I was thinking about some stuff listening to the radio today. Listening to the police radio. We have another shooting at Animas Valley Mall in Farmington, New Mexico, in northwest New Mexico. So that's 2 in about 3 or 4 weeks. Not counting the police shooting where they responded to the wrong address and killed someone. This town is getting ridiculously active when it comes to this type of activity. What's interesting about this shooting is one of the suspects ran to a local diner. And the local diner actually helped capture the guy in the bathroom at great risk of themselves because they didn't know this gentleman was armed. He just ran into their diner and they just kind of shut him off in the bathroom. What's interesting about this, though, is they respond with, the diner did themselves, with a post saying, hey, we just had one of the 3 suspects from the mall shooting in our restaurant, and we helped lock him into the bathroom before police responded. And then they spouted off some very pro 2A things. They said, basically stay strapped or get clapped. And I've spoken about this many times, but it's getting to the point in society, if you've not paid attention, give you the demographics of the area. So I live in a small town of maybe 40 to 60,000 people. We have 3 suburb towns, Bloomfield, Aztec, and Kirtland. And then a little bit farther out is Shiprock. We abut the Navajo Reservation and the Apache Reservation. So our city swells on the weekends usually because people come in to get supplies from these other parts of the town. So it's not unusual to see our town really kind of jammed, especially during traffic jam, like normal traffic jam times, like 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, a little busy. Around 4:30, 5 o'clock, again, a little busy, so there's a traffic jam. But it highlights what I'm saying is that the stuff that's happening in larger cities like Chicago and Albuquerque, the crime rise there is actually trickling over into smaller communities. And you look at what's going on nationally, and there's a lot of George Soros-funded DAs, district attorneys, and they have this policy of letting people out of jail for just about anything, granting them bail. Now, what is this? This is a huge problem. Because what happens is it creates this revolving door of bad dudes going in and bad dudes coming out, and nothing really being done about it. And what you're going to see, or what I predict we're going to see, is you're going to start seeing a lot more American citizens being armed going out and dealing with these people decisively. Now, there's good and bad here. Good in that they're done, and these people won't ever do this stupid shit again. Bad in that this is vigilante justice, and that's not what we want in society, or at least that's what I used to think we don't need. But it's starting to get to the point where even in larger cities, more metropolitan areas, more, how would you put it, polished areas like Chicago, where you have couples just going out to try to find something to eat, and then they're accosted and assaulted by massive groups of people. At the same time, and when I say accosted and beat up, the woman in this case that I'm talking about, because this happened after a young man was killed for going to the wrong house and trying to open the door of said wrong house, and the homeowner responded with killing the young man. Now, that sounds excessive, but if you think about, this is an 84-year-old man who's home alone, and this guy who's over 6 foot tall, teenager, is trying to go through a door. That's burglary. That's the classical sense of burglary, classical definition of burglary, that is. Now, there's a lot of people that are protesting, pissed off because this man was killed by this older man. I tend to err on the side of you need to know where the hell you're going, and you shouldn't be trespassing on other people's land or property, and you damn sure should be knowing you're at the right place before you enter a residence. Case in point, look at what happened to Farmington PD. They're on the wrong side of the damn street, responded and killed the homeowner. There's been multiple case stuff coming out from that, from both the Robert Dotson's family and from Farmington PD, and they're giving conflicting stories, so to speak. The one from Farmington PD says that you can hear an audible rack of the gun. In the video I saw, the body camera footage, I don't hear a gun rack. If anything, I hear the screen door open. That's where he probably made the mistake, the homeowner that is, because he couldn't see what it was. I would also caution and say maybe you should have looked outside before you tried to do that. I don't know that that would have been a good plan either, because these guys seemed really trigger happy. But we are in a point in time, and I've said this often before, that you need to be really considering carrying a firearm and being trained to use said firearm. Because at any given time now, some idiot could be doing something in another place, but then you're mixed up in that incident because you were just at the wrong time, wrong place. Now, there's some heartburn when you say this, or when I say this, because, that means people might die. But maybe it is time that some people had other repercussions than just getting away with what they're doing. We see this consistently where bad actors, whether they're criminals or people that are about to become criminals, want to perpetrate some sort of bad act on you, and you're the only one that can self-rescue. It also brings up the point that I mentioned before in this podcast, that if you put holes in things, you need to know how to patch and fix those holes. And I say that because you're going to be more helpful in an incident like that, in all honesty, saving people or stopping their bleed than you are going to actually be stopping the person shooting. There is a potential that you do stop the person shooting, and you need to think about that. Are you willing and ready to end someone's life? Because if you're going to carry a gun, that's a real prospect, and it's something you need to think about. And ladies, if you're listening to this podcast, that goes for you too. You are one of the most vulnerable populations out there. Don't take this offensively, but you also don't seem very self-aware of your surroundings. A lot of you guys don't understand that you have to have your head on a swivel all the time. I'm not saying being a psycho. I'm saying you need to be like you're watching a toddler. That's the best way I could put it to anybody. Is you need to watch what's going on in the corners of the room, everywhere around you, watch the entrances and exits. And it's sad that we're in this place, but you also have to look at the demographics or the society we're in. We're in a society where we have people that can't figure out if they're male or female, and they're coddled into thinking that's normal. Okay? We have a society of people that believe fully that their way is the only way and the only right way, and they're willing to push that on anyone else. There's also a group of people, criminals, who see you as a target. You are their financial backing, their source of monetary gain. So we've entered in this place where mental health still is being ignored, and we have a lot of people that are willing to do and perpetrate violence on other people. To that end, Colorado just barely eked out past not having an assault weapons ban. Now, assault is an action. What they're actually going after is modern sporting arms. and they aren't weapons of war. We all know this. Washington State, however, lost that battle. Now there are a couple. Joe Biden specifically is going hard. He wants 3 gun measures passed nationally. I don't think his chances are very good, but it's, it depends on how many people turncoat. It looks like he wants to have an assault weapons ban at the national level. Modern sporting rifles, that is. He wants red flag laws nationwide. I can tell you, New Mexico, they haven't helped with crime. In fact, we have a higher crime incidence than we did before the red flag laws. He also wants universal background checks. So in some parts of the world, not in New Mexico anymore because this passed a couple years ago, you would be able to meet someone, exchange funds and property, and that was the end of it. Now you would have to, if this is passed nationally, it is passed in the state of New Mexico, if you want to transfer a firearm from one person to another, you have to go get a background check from somewhere. Now, the background checks have not stopped any incidents of shooting. Every one of these mass shooters has passed a background check, or they stole the gun from somewhere else. Parkland, he passed the background check to get an AR-15. Okay, to get a weapon. I don't really care what weapon he used. He passed a background check. My shooting in Aztec, he passed a background check. Even though he was on the radar, so was the Parkland shooter. This most recent one in Tennessee, the trans shooter that went through there. They're saying that the manifesto is astronomically bad and would cause other acts of violence. I think what they're trying to say is, in that manifesto, it would spark violence against one community, because the trans community is only 1%, maybe 2% of the population at large. So why is this becoming an increasing phenomena? And I still maintain that there's a mental health emergency that's happening in the United States that no one's willing to accept or to start moving parts to address. Instead, they're looking at the object that people are using for this. There was another shooting in Louisville, not Louisville, Kentucky, but Louisville, Missouri, I believe, Louisville. And this shooter explicitly wrote a manifesto saying that guns were the problem, and he was going to demonstrate the reason why. So he went and got an AR-15 and shot up a bank. They keep bringing up the fact that these are done with AR-15s, even though the shooting in Tennessee was actually done with a sub-2000 more so than anything else. I know that seems semantics, but language matters here. Because when you start trying to isolate one object or one thing, what eventually happens historically, if you look at Germany and you look like Nazi Germany, real Nazi Germany, you look at the communists when they took power in Russia or Cuba or anywhere else in the world. Any of these places that they use this economic model, the first thing they do is ban the firearm. Why? Because that takes away takes away the power of the people, so that there is only one entity that has a complete monopoly of violence. In the United States, that monopoly of violence still exists, but we still have a little bit of say in what they do. It's just going to take more people to get involved before that happens. You can look at the Bundy Ranch situation, where a lot of American patriots showed up there, and the feds backed off because they were facing down the barrel of people that were just as convicted in their thought process as they were. And rather than try to go in and have a Waco situation, they realized it was a bad plan. We need more of that. Enter the Bud Light fiasco. So for all the conservatives that keep going, well, we won, we did the Bud Light thing and we won, we can back off now. No, now is where you need to keep going. They're seeing that there is an increase in sales right now, slight increase. It's still bad. The person that was in charge of the marketing campaign that decided this was a brilliant idea to put Dylan Mullaney on Budweiser, making him a brand ambassador, has stepped down or stepped aside or took a leave of absence. Doesn't matter, they're not there. What this shows is this is spin control. And it shows at the very top level of the corporation, they're going, oh crap, we screwed up. They've also went so far that anyone that has made video or content on YouTube for Dylan Mullaney and for Budweiser, or talking about the Budweiser situation, has had their videos strict and pulled out because they want to silence the story. That means we're winning. That means we still have a method that draws large corporations and draws attention and makes them sit up and take notice. And if you look at what's going on in society, it's time that we do that for everything. You cannot ban something that is more ubiquitously adopted than the drugs. I say this because the drug war, let's be honest, has failed. It is easier to go find drugs now than it ever has been in the entire time the United States has been a thing. And I'm not talking about marijuana, I'm talking about fentanyl. There isn't a time that I hear on that police radio that I listen to one or two incidents of overdose. There was an incident at Farmington High School, 3 incidents to be honest, that involved people ODing on fentanyl. So if the streets are flooded with a drug that'll kill you, there's mental issues with kids who are locked away for 3 years, away from their friends. And now they're back into this mix where social media amps up all the stresses and downfalls that they've had in their life, and that they can't escape that. Eventually they start finding their own community of people. And in that community of people, there are a lot of sick individuals that keep telling them and egging them on to do something about their situation. And in that situation, they believe that violence is the answer. Violence isn't the answer. I mean, if we have to use violence, if I have to use violence, I have done everything up to the point of even apologizing, because this means that I know I'm about to end someone's life. And it's sad in today's society that we have to start thinking about that, but it is the reality. Any one of my friends, my listeners, could be at the mall. There's only one mall in Farmington or in San Juan County, and it's a Saturday at 10:50 a.m. Anybody could have went there just to get what they needed to do, whatever they were doing for the day, and gotten mixed up in this. So what are you going to do if the chips fall and you are in this situation? You know, you hear a gunshot. Do you know what a gunshot sounds like? Like up close and personal inside of an enclosed area? They sound different. If they're on the opposite end of a building, do you know what that little pop was that you didn't originally register as a gunshot? That's a gunshot. Acoustics change when they're inside, and that's something you need to be very aware of, because it could save your life. You hearing a pop and acting accordingly with you and your family could be the difference between you escaping and making it out, or falling victim to another shooting of some random person who has lost their damn mind. The same token is, you could hear that pop and you can address it, meaning you get involved. Now, I've always thought of myself as a sheepdog. I've taken great lengths to get trained. And even in my sore and bruised, battered body right now from the little accident I had, I am still fairly confident that if I was in this situation, I know what the result would be. And it's not good for the other person. That isn't me being cocky. That's me knowing that I don't just go out and shoot 50 rounds and call it a day of training. I go out with my handgun and I go through 350, 500 rounds before I call myself I'm good for a little bit. And the reason why I do that, the reason why I spend so much time and effort and money in learning these firearms is because of this. In honesty, it has to do with what happened in Aztec. I promised myself as soon as that happened, I would never be put in a situation that I couldn't defend those poor people around me and myself ever again. To that end, I know I'm not the only one. There is a lot of people. There are 60 million firearms that were sold during the COVID crisis, fake pandemic that scared everybody to death, when we realized we couldn't count on the cops to show up because of the riots in Ferguson. Well, nothing's changed now. The cops will show up, but it'll be after the fact. What did you have to do in that meantime? I like to think that we're winning the culture war, and I do believe we are. Because there are those bright spots like Budweiser freaking the hell out. There are those bright spots where you're seeing the government take heavier-handed approaches because they know they've lost, and there's only one way they can, and that's to get only way to win, that is. And the way they win is by making their power absolute. And we can't ever let that happen. We live in a two-tiered justice system now. And I never thought I would be a guy that would actually have to admit that. But after seeing, Hunter Biden get off with what has ever happened, them going after Trump for, basically paying a hooker off like Clinton did the first time with an intern. And now seeing Alec Baldwin get off completely scot-free with no charges for killing someone on a movie set. Now, Alec Baldwin's an asshole. Anyone who's ever dealt with or saw him, they all attest to that. So, he also had a problem with Helena Hutchins before he ever got into that. They had a dinner meeting where they discussed issues such as negligent discharges on set. And now, this man is now walking scot-free. You can't tell me that if you're a Democrat or well-known, that you're going to go to jail for any set time. Now, I'm sure this has always been the case. It's just been really, really highlighted now because of what we're seeing. While everybody's bitching and moaning about social media and podcasts and all this other things amplifying these situations, I think it's because of that we're seeing the decay that's actually there. That dream I used to have about the American dream, that our government wouldn't do that. I mean, they're there to help us. That's what we had always been taught. Well, that's because I was indoctrinated. That's how we all were. Many of us went and served in the military because we believed in the American ideal. Just to find out, after going and being deployed overseas somewhere and guarding poppy fields, that maybe that's not what the American dream was. And after seeing the stuff with COVID, seeing the cops, state PD specifically, come to local businesses and shut them down, and then more recently shooting a homeowner after responding to the wrong address and laughing about responding to the wrong address while they're on film going up right before the shooting, it makes me think that all the good ones, all the good cops, were smart. They retired. They left. I still believe that the United States needs a little bit of that indoctrination that we all got in schools, that teaches us the greatness of what America can be, but teaches us our rights, teaches us our history, good, bad, or other. There's a lot of American history that's very dark. There's a lot of American history that's very good. And for 249 years, this country has existed. There's got to be one reason, with one single government. There's got to be a reason why we're here. And the only way I see ourselves getting out of this is people getting active. The Bud Light, I keep bringing that up because that's the easiest thing the right has ever had to do, was just not buy a particular type of brand of beer to cause this much hate and discontent that everybody has seen it. You know, I talk to bartenders at the local restaurants here, and they're like, yeah, I have regulars that outright say, no, I'm not touching Bud Light, I'm not touching Modelo, I'm not touching any of the InBev products. This is rural New Mexico. Why is that? It's because people are getting fed up. The wool's been lifted over people's eyes, and they're seeing it. You know, I keep mentioning Jeffrey Epstein's list on Facebook. The reason why is because I don't want the story to die. We all know who is on the list. We all know it. Why isn't there a conviction? It's because they were all, those people that were on that list are in power. Just like we probably won't see the manifesto from the Tennessee shooter, because they see it as being blatantly obvious that we're going to see this group of people doing this stuff as evil. They are. If you're willing to perpetrate this type of act and not think that there are human elements to this, you're the problem. You know, there should never be a time where you pick up a gun and your first thought is, I'm going to get my pound of flesh. I'm going to get my justice. Until all avenues have been exhausted, the last thing we want to do is breach that fourth box. We were given 3 boxes to defend our government. The jury box, well, let's start off with the first one. The soapbox, freedom of speech. Get up and tell people what you think. The jury box, to make sure that those being tried get a fair shot. The ballot box, to vote in who we are positive will keep and maintain our country. That has failed a lot. And the 4th box is the cartridge box. It's the box that no one wants to breach, no one wants to open. But if they keep pushing, I don't see another way. Because what you're going to see is there's going to be some people that are just tired of seeing injustice. And Americans don't stand for that. They never have. That's why the civil rights movement got so active, is because it was universally accepted that this was wrong to keep someone down. Now, you have an entire other group right now who was once a majority in the United States, and now you're trying to tell them they are in the wrong for everything up to and including being born, and just because of their skin color, they're a bad person. I thought the whole idea of the civil rights movement was to make sure that wasn't how we existed as a country. You know, we keep sending weapons and ammunition to Ukraine. And it was leaked this last week that we have special forces people on the ground maintaining equipment there, and that the Russians are actually kind of winning that war. That should have been expected. Yeah, the Russians started it, but we all should have known that the Russians, by sheer numbers, would win. Yet we're willing to spend billions in Ukraine and not harden our schools. There hasn't been a school one that's ever been advertised as having armed security or armed staff there that has ever had a mass casualty event. Why? You know, we've tried it your way for the last 30 years. It hasn't worked. Maybe it's time to try it our way. Maybe it's time to make sure that there's armed staff at every school that is capable of doing what needs to be done when bad guys come knocking. These are our kids. And as long as we're willing to send them to the public school and not homeschool them, they're in the state's care. You know, in the state's care, you should worry. You have states right now that are coming out and saying the parents don't have a right to know what their kids are telling the teachers. And that is a problem. Because the one person responsible for the child isn't the school. It's the parent. If parents were more active, maybe the society would be better. And I don't see that happening either. A 13-year-old right now that wasn't raised correctly, and when I say raised correctly, raised with morals and respect for humanity in general, they're already at that age that they're unruly. What are you going to do with them? Because now they're going to be in the system forever. We live in some trying times. And the one thing that is universally accepted by my side, I guess is what I would put it, or myself, is that an armed society is a polite society. Back in the cowboy days when everybody was armed, you didn't see what we're seeing now. And there were trans people in the cowboy days. And there were people that were just bad dudes in the cowboy days. I'm not suggesting we should be these monsters that go out and just perpetrate violence everywhere. Nevertheless, we need to be the ones to be ready for it if it happens. You can't even trust law enforcement nowadays to have your back. So in that environment, what are you going to do? I know what I'm going to do. Like, share, subscribe, be great.